What if I told you that one of the most dangerous battles of this war isn't being fought with tanks or artillery, but with swarms of cheap flying machines, and that the balance of victory could come down to nothing more than basic math? From the very beginning, the war in Ukraine has been shaped by the growing presence and variety of combat drones. At first, it was the military-grade drones that dominated the skies. Russia's Iranian-made Shahed 136 and Ukraine's Bayraktar TB2. For a brief period, these machines were hailed as kings of the battlefield. Long-range operations beyond the reach of conventional interceptors gave them an edge. The skies became their domain, their buzzing engines the soundtrack of a new kind of warfare. But as the war dragged on, something shifted. The economics of the battlefield began to matter as much as the tactics. In a move that spoke volumes about desperation and ingenuity, Ukraine and Russia alike turned to simple commercial drones. Machines originally built as toys for hobbyists, now re-engineered to drop grenades or ram into targets. Why? Because they were cheap, expendable, and deadly enough. Yet now, Ukraine may be on the verge of unleashing one of the boldest innovations in drone warfare to date. Its name is the Mongoose, a jet-powered, reusable interceptor drone designed not just to defend but to hunt. Equipped with a shotgun-like weapon system, the Mongoose is meant to bring down enemy drones again and again. And this isn't just another gadget on the battlefield, it's a reimagining of how air defense itself should work in an era where cost has become the decisive weapon. Because here's the truth. Defending against drones isn't really about engineering or bravery, it's about money. Let's do the math. A single Patriot interceptor missile, the kind Ukraine received from the United States, cost more than $3 million. Even a NASAM interceptor, the AIM-9X variant, cost over $1 million. That kind of weapon makes sense if you're shooting down a cruise missile worth several million itself. Even if you fire 2 to guarantee the kill, you're still coming out ahead. But drones? That's another story. A Shahed 136 is estimated to cost somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000. In other words, Ukraine is being forced to spend millions just to stop weapons that cost Russia mere tens of thousands. Every time Ukraine wins, it loses money. Russia, by contrast, is playing the long game, bleeding its opponent economically, one cheap drone at a time. And Russia has doubled down on this strategy. By March of 2025, Moscow had ramped up its use of Shahed drones from about 200 launches a week to more than 1,000. In one record-breaking attack on July 9th, it unleashed 728 drones and decoys in a single wave. Think about that for a moment. Hundreds of low-cost flying bombs, forcing Ukraine to fire off interceptor after interceptor just to keep its infrastructure standing. It's a cruel game of arithmetic, one where the defender goes broke every time they succeed. That's the battlefield where the Mongoose enters, a direct response to Russia's economic warfare. Designed by the Technari Bureau in Odessa, the Mongoose isn't about flashy speed or brute force. It's about flipping the cost equation back in Ukraine's favor. How? By being reusable. By carrying a multi-shot weapon that can engage multiple targets per mission. And by being simple enough to operate without the sprawling infrastructure that traditional missile defense systems demand. The weapon itself is ingenious. Instead of a high-tech missile with a massive warhead, the Mongoose carries a shotgun-style system. Multiple barrels designed to spray enemy drones with pellets that shred their engines or propellers. This is based on a clear understanding of drone vulnerabilities. Shaheds might be feared, but they're fragile. Their engines are exposed, their propellers are unprotected. Their lightweight frames mean that even minimal damage can send them crashing to the ground. A shotgun blast that would barely dent a fighter jet can completely cripple a Shahed's propulsion system. And because the Mongoose is powered by a jet engine, it can reach speeds of around 200 miles per hour, fast enough to catch the Shaheds that matter most, the mass-produced models that Russia relies on. Its combat radius is about 8 miles, making it an ideal last line of defense against incoming threats. This might not sound like much, but remember, it doesn't need to chase down every futuristic prototype. It just needs to outmatch the cheap, plentiful drones that Russia is flooding into Ukrainian skies. Here's what makes it even more remarkable. The Mongoose uses thermal guidance. Unlike traditional interceptors that can be thrown off by GPS jamming or electronic warfare, the Mongoose tracks the faint heat signature of the Shahed's engine. It doesn't matter if the airwaves are scrambled, the drone still sees its target. From about half a mile away, it locks on automatically, switching into attack mode without needing operator input. In practice, this makes it a self-hunting predator. Technari estimates that each Mongoose could destroy between 10 and 12 Shaheds over its lifespan. After each mission, it can return to base, be refueled and reloaded, and sent back into the fight. Compare that to kamikaze interceptors, which die with their target. The cost difference is staggering. Instead of producing hundreds of thousands of disposable drones each year, Ukraine could produce just a few thousand reusables and get the same effect. But here's what they don't tell you. This isn't just about saving money, it's about changing the philosophy of defense itself. For decades, air defense was built around the idea that each incoming threat was so valuable, so dangerous, that it justified an equally expensive interceptor. That logic worked when the threat was a handful of multi-million-dollar missiles, but it collapses completely when you're facing swarms of cheap drones. The Mongoose says, "We don't need to beat you with luxury weapons, we just need to beat you with persistence." Of course, challenges remain. The Mongoose's 8-mile range limits its ability to cover wide areas. Its shotgun approach requires it to get close, almost point-blank, to its targets. Against massive swarms, a single Mongoose might only take down a few before being overwhelmed, and Russia isn't standing still. It's already testing new jet-powered Shahed variants that can hit speeds up to 500 miles per hour. At those speeds, even the Mongoose would struggle. Still, the promise is undeniable. If Ukraine can mass-produce these interceptors, train operators, and network them into swarms of their own, the balance of power in the drone war could shift dramatically. Imagine dozens of Mongoose interceptors working in tandem, overwhelming enemy formations with coordinated fire. Defense, in other words, finally catching up with offense. And think bigger. This isn't just about Ukraine. It's about the future of warfare. Around the world, militaries are watching the skies and realizing that billion-dollar systems like the Patriot are ill-suited to swarms of cheap drones. They're realizing that defense needs to be fast, flexible, and above all, affordable. The Mongoose could be the template, not a parade piece for show, but a mass-produced, reusable tool that can be ordered, deployed, and used as needed. We've seen this story before. History tells us that wars often accelerate innovation. In the Second World War, desperate necessity gave birth to radar, jet engines, and rockets. In Vietnam, cheap surface-to-air missiles humbled the most advanced aircraft of the time, and today in Ukraine the same cycle is repeating. Innovation born not out of luxury but of survival. Mainstream media will tell you this is just another weapon, but if you look closer, it's much more than that. It's a challenge to the very model of military-industrial profit that has dominated for decades. It says you don't need a trillion-dollar arms industry to defend your skies. You need creativity, adaptability, and the willingness to break with tradition. So here's the question. Will the Mongoose live up to its promise? Can this jet-powered, shotgun-wielding interceptor really tame the drone swarms that have terrorized Ukraine's cities? Or will Russia's relentless innovation push the battlefield into yet another new phase? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. The age of drone warfare is here, and the old rules no longer apply. If you want to keep up with these shifts in global power, if you want to understand the battles behind the headlines, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and join us for the next episode, because this war isn't just shaping the future of Ukraine, it's shaping the future of warfare itself.